My friend, there is a unique and heavy sorrow that comes from a broken family. It's a living grief, a wound that never quite becomes a scar. For 8 years, that sorrow was my constant companion. My son Daniel, the boy I had raised, prayed for, and loved with every fiber of my being, was estranged from me. It started with a slow drift in his late teens, and then became a painful, deliberate break after a bitter argument. The details of the fight have long since faded into a blur of harsh words and hurt feelings. What remained was the silence, the unanswered phone calls, the returned letters, the empty chair at every holiday dinner. My life became a vigil of waiting. Every time the phone rang, my heart would leap with a desperate hope, only to crash with disappointment. I prayed relentlessly. I bargained with God. Lord, just let him call. Just soften his heart. I will do anything. Just bring my son home. My prayers felt like stones I was throwing into a vast, empty canyon with not even an echo in return. My faith became intertwined with this one singular request. I believed that if God was good, and if he loved me, he would answer this prayer. He would fix my broken family, and as the years of silence stretched on, a dangerous root of bitterness began to grow in the soil of my heart. I grew angry with God. Why was he withholding this one good thing? Couldn't he see my pain? Didn't he care? I was in danger of letting this waiting consume me, of letting the bitterness choke out all the joy and peace in my life. I felt utterly alone, abandoned by my son, and it seemed by my God. One spring, in an effort to find a distraction, I decided to take on a challenge, to reclaim a patch of our backyard that had been neglected for years. It was a tangled mess of stubborn weeds, thorny vines, and compacted clay-like soil. It was an ugly, forgotten corner of the yard. The first day, I went at it with fury. I ripped and pulled at the weeds, my frustration with my son and my anger at God fueling my efforts. It was exhausting, thankless work. My back ached, my hands were scratched and bleeding. At the end of the day, I had only cleared a small patch, and the ground underneath was as hard as rock. I sat on the ground, covered in dirt and sweat, and I wept. "This is just like my heart, God," I cried out. "It's hard and ugly, and nothing good can grow here." In my despair, I felt a gentle, quiet thought settle into my mind. It wasn't my own. It was a question. What does a good gardener do with ground like this? A good gardener doesn't just demand that the ground produce. A good gardener cultivates. They don't give up because the soil is hard. They patiently break it up. They amend it, adding nutrients and compost to make it rich. They water it. They tend it. It's a slow, deliberate, loving process. The work is not just in the planting, but in the patient preparation of the soil. As I sat there, a profound truth began to wash over me. All these years, I had been demanding a harvest from God. I wanted the beautiful flower my son's return. But I had been ignoring the state of the soil in my own heart. God hadn't been ignoring my prayers. He was answering them, just not in the way I expected. He was using this painful season of waiting not just to work on Daniel's heart, but to do a deep and necessary work in mine. He was the divine gardener. He was using the silence to show me the weeds of bitterness I had allowed to grow. He was using the ache of loneliness to break up the hard, compacted soil of my self-reliance. He was trying to amend my heart with patience, to water it with his peace, and to pull the thorny vines of anger so that something new could grow. I realized that the miracle I was so desperate for, the restoration of my family, might first require a different miracle, the transformation of my own heart. I had to learn to love my son without condition, to pray for him without a transactional demand, and to trust God's timing and his process, even when it was painful and I couldn't understand it. My focus shifted. My work in the garden became a parable for the work God was doing in me. As I broke up the hard soil, I prayed, "Lord, break up the hardness in my heart." As I pulled the deep-rooted weeds, I prayed, "Lord, pull out the bitterness and resentment in my soul." As I mixed in rich compost, I prayed, "Lord, fill me with your grace and your peace." The physical work became a form of prayer, of partnership with God, and slowly things began to change. The garden began to transform from a patch of wasteland into a place of life and potential, and my heart began to soften. The sharp edge of my grief was still there, but it was no longer all-consuming. A strange, resilient peace began to bloom in the place where bitterness had once taken root. My friend, I don't have a fairy tale ending for you, where my son showed up on my doorstep with a bouquet of flowers the day I finished the garden. Life is often more complex than that.
Hi.
But what I can tell you is this: the greatest miracle happened inside of me. God taught me that His presence is not contingent on answered prayers. He is the gardener of our hearts, and He is always at work, especially in the long seasons of waiting. He is still with you. If you are in a season of waiting, feeling that your prayers have gone unheard, perhaps He is inviting you to look at the soil. Perhaps He is doing a deep, quiet, and holy work within you, preparing you for a harvest you can't yet see. Don't mistake His patient cultivation for absence. He is there, with His hands in the dirt of your life, lovingly tending to your heart. Trust the gardener. He is making all things new, starting with you.